This is Scott, joined each week by Sheriff Rich Stanek and special guest this week, Clay Wilemon. Clay, glad to see you as always. So what we thought we'd do, and I won't even bore any of you with my technical hurdle, but we just hit record so you wouldn't even know about it. Yeah, technology's fun. And I guess some irony, we're going to be talking about technology, more so AI, but overall analytics with Clay this week. We thought we'd mix it up and kind of get his perspective just from a technology standpoint. Clay serves as CEO and chairman of 4L Data Intelligence, a pioneering healthcare data intelligence firm focused on combating payment fraud, waste, and abuse using AI-driven solutions. Like I said, we wanted to kind of go a little bit of a different angle. Again, this is a law enforcement-based show. However, I've been intrigued, and I actually prompted this a couple weeks ago, Clay. And again, thank you for making the time. Let's kind of get your perspective as far as AI and data intelligence as it can be an aid, and certainly give some background as far as what you're doing with the healthcare space, because that's obviously relevant and where we connected. But what can it be used and how can it be used in law enforcement and just helping essentially bring data together in a more efficient and effective manner and help make informed decisions?
Yeah, Scott, great setup there. So when you think about the application of artificial intelligence, and the first thing you have to say is, okay, artificial intelligence is a gigantic category that's getting bigger and bigger. Okay, so we start there. But you think in conceptually about what is it artificial intelligence can do to mitigate fraud, waste, and abuse in healthcare and in other areas as well, and how can that aid law enforcement? And I think that the summary of that is that artificial intelligence and a platform like the one we have at Data, our Integrate AI risk detection technology, is a patented artificial intelligence platform. And the core patent is for the detection of operational threats, right? So you think about that. And what's an operational threat in healthcare from a fraud, waste, abuse perspective is a bad actor trying to take money out of the healthcare system that should be going to help people get healthcare. You just take that basic point. And then you look at some of the challenges of when I look at today with most rules-based technologies, I'm looking at a provider or a healthcare claim in isolation. What artificial intelligence enables us to do is to look at all providers and all claims simultaneously in real time to see those behaviors, the patterns, the relationships, and really the intent fast enough to be able to do something about it, either to prevent or detect in such a way that I can comprehensively put it together as a case so law enforcement can move faster.
No, absolutely. And in that, have you had, of course, we're not going to divulge any trade secrets or anything proprietary, but have you had the opportunity to work with any law enforcement yet? Or is that something, and I guess I'll expand that just to government. And again, I get it if you need to be a little discreet, but as far as how far can your technology, this technology reach, and what have you been able to affect so far?
Yes, Scott. So our technology, especially as it really is used, say, to equip the strategic investigative units of a payer, right? So our technology is serving up to those strategic investigative units a package. Okay, so for example, a case that was referred to federal enforcement involved a core provider, okay, who had a referral collusion network with multiple providers. And this had been going on for years and was undetectable utilizing, the conventional claims editing and analytics tools in healthcare. With our technology, because you're working with structured and unstructured data, and we also we've built our own database on every provider in the US that's updated daily. So we were able to look at the relationships and the behaviors and the outliers among this core provider and his network to say, hey, this provider has multiple aliases, he's got these relationships, and they made hundreds of thousands of referrals in a year, but hey, he only saw 1,500 patients, right? So it's hard to make 400, 100,000, 200,000 referrals off of seeing 1,500 patients. By the way, geospatially, these providers were suspiciously far away. And in addition, a lot of them had sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. So you package all of that up and you're able to connect the dots that eventually humans would have gotten to, but it probably would have been years down the road, and it would be one of these giant Department of Justice $400 million cases, right? We want to see those cases in near real time when they're hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands.
Absolutely.
And so then when AI identifies, these discrepancies, I'm not sure the right term, what do they do? I mean, it turns it over to local law enforcement, federal law enforcement to put it together for a possible criminal case or further investigation, as it may be?
Yeah, Rich, that's a great question. So our 4L data intelligence platform has a function called the SIU Hub, the Strategic Investigative Unit Hub. So what that does is and think of it in terms of packaging a case, like how many claims, how many providers, how many sanctions, what's the actual behavior that's being engaged, packaging all of that up. Are these real locations or fake locations, et cetera? Packaging it up so that an investigator has, if you will, the result of weeks and weeks and weeks or months worth of investigative work packaged so that now you can make decisions. The next iteration, Rich, of what we'll launch in the fall is actually, if you think about it, a state Medicaid level and some of the MEDUFA requirements, is actually using generative AI to mine our patented platform to actually package those cases so in a format that is what, say, a MEDUFA agency wants. Okay. So we could do the same with any law enforcement that says, I want to see cases this way, prepackaged, so my investigator can say, yes, no, I'm going to go pursue this. Gen AI really gives us that ability as a next step.
And so I understand that it takes a look at the individuals and the history or pattern. Can I, as a law enforcement officer, being a former detective myself, can I come to you and say, hey, I'm looking at, this guy named Scott N. and, see what Scott's been doing or not doing across multiple platforms or providers or states?
Great question on that, Rich. So today at 4L Data, we're not mixing, say, data from one payer to the next. Okay, so say at a commercial level. Now, where you can go, however, we are collecting data on providers individually across multiple platforms around their integrity and their ownership interest, et cetera. Going forward, if you look at a governmental level, so for example, you look at Medicare or Medicaid, which has access to all these billions of claims across virtually every provider in the US, at that level, you can then have that near real-time comprehensive picture of every provider and what they're doing.
Interesting.
And Rich, was your scenario tied to the provider or to a non-provider individual?
Well, it could be either. I mean, maybe Scott N is on my radar screen because of something else. And somebody says, I think he, as the, deputy CEO or COO of a healthcare provider is doing this, or it seems awfully odd that he has, 3 houses, 4 cars, 6 wives. How's he doing this? And so I'm asking, proactively, can I go to and do something like that? I mean, I think the whole AI discussion is really interesting. We've yet to delve into it on this show in this manner, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of people who love it. There's a lot of people who are scared to death of it. Most people just don't understand it.
Yeah.
And Rich, you bring up a great point, because what does exist today, so inside of 4L Data, we have what's called the 4L Provider Intelligence Solution. And you think about the financial industry, if you're investigating a financial crime, or a financial suspicious activity, the know your customer concept that exists. Well, we've created a know your provider platform. So we needed, as a company, when we built our AI platform, we realized that we thought we were just going to go buy provider data commercially in the market. And we found that it's perpetually latent, out of date, inaccurate, et cetera. So we built a platform to monitor every provider in the US continuously. So for example, like you were saying, a lot of the data you just mentioned on a provider exists in that platform. And if you look at a use case, I think a year or 2 years ago, there was a $400 million fraud case that was brought by the Department of Justice and I think Arizona Medicaid, if I'm not mistaken. The providers in that particular fraud had come into Arizona from another state, and they had been bad actors in another state. In the state of Arizona, they had no visibility to their bad actorness in other states, right? The provider intelligence platform we built is national so that literally as a provider comes into a state, you can say, hey, flag, this person's been up to bad things elsewhere. That transparency doesn't exist. And then we're literally applying that to every claim that comes through. So now you start connecting these actors around activity and claims to be able to say, hey, I got multiple people with suspicious activity, or they're ineligible, right? Because you think about millions and millions of healthcare claims get paid each year on providers who are ineligible, and the payers just have no visibility into it because of their integrity.
So you brought up a point, Rich, that I'd love to get Clay's take on. There's just this week, I've had multiple inquiries from AI companies, and I'm not saying I have AI fatigue, but from a business perspective, it is hard to distinguish between what you do and what others do. And that's generally my first question. Help me understand. Take that from business and just overall, just practical application, right? From the robocalls you get that I've qualified for a loan. I get probably 20 a day. I'm sure those are all generated in some sort of artificial sense. Like, can you give our listeners and ourselves included kind of a basic, this is what AI is, and then obviously go into more detail around just not necessarily the entire history of, but certainly what it does today and where you see it going as far as just what do people need to be worried about it? Is there the Terminator aspect of it and beyond? And again, there's a lot of good uses, but essentially, what is a good table stakes explanation today?
Yes. I think, Scott, that's a good question because if you just look, we all consume media every day. Mm-hmm. And it's Claude, Anthropic's generative AI platform, Claude, and it's the greatest thing. And then the next week it's Grok, and Grok's the greatest thing. And then Chat GPT-5 is the greatest thing, and oh goodness, Chat GPT-5 got hacked within 24 hours of launch, right? Mm-hmm. So you're just seeing this cascade, this wave of AI. You go back to the basics of the types of artificial intelligence, and you look at just, for example, machine learning, right? And you layer on that, say, neural networks on top of that can look at relationships. And so ultimately you look at all of these different subcategories of artificial intelligence, and it can become overwhelming. So then you say, what is it I want artificial intelligence to do for me? Do I want it to understand? Do I want it to think and act, in like an agentic platform would do? Do I want it to actually work on its own to do something? Do I want it to enable me to do what I would do, but do it faster and better? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So I think in just layman's terms, looking at it that way, it helps. Ultimately, then you say, do I want it to reduce workload? Right? Do I want to take investigators? And, literally one of our folks went to an investigator conference. We had them go through the certification process. Half of the day was how to click Google Chrome and find data on healthcare providers, which was crazy. Yeah. That we're teaching that as an investigative tool because we can do it in nanoseconds today. Those are the types of efficiency elements, because ultimately you want Rich and his colleagues to have all the stuff in front of them, so now they can put the pieces together and go take action, not spend 30 days pointing and clicking and building a file, right? Agreed. So I think those are really key elements. And then that's really how on the fraud, waste, abuse side of healthcare, I think we should look at AI. The next generation, and I think this will be reality this year, Certainly in our platform, it will. But literally to say, rather than investigator go, do that first level investigation, let's let the technology go do that. And then let the investigator have generative AI tools to ask the questions they would normally be asking, and let the technology bring back answers. Those won't all be perfect, but they'll be useful.
That is so interesting. And I mean, after 40 plus years in law enforcement, I now do consulting with a lot of different clients, and particularly technology. I swear half the clients I have are AI clients. Some of them even end their email address in .ai, which was beyond me, up until 6, 7 months ago. But I think about it from a law enforcement perspective. I see it in body-worn cameras. I see it in police reports. I have a client who is training other law enforcement investigators and patrol officers using AI. I see it in 911 dispatch when you call 911 and you're trying to get assistance. And we see it in the jail environment as well. It's pervasive throughout law enforcement. Yet again, many of our chiefs and sheriffs really don't have a deep understanding of what it can do and what its capabilities. I'm just curious, maybe you can answer this, maybe not, but out of all the different professions out there that are looking at AI, which do you think this is the most pervasive? Would you say it's like, I don't think law enforcement is the most pervasive, but I could see like investments or, those kinds of things kind of predicting the future, because the future is based on the past.
Yeah. And I think, Rich, when you look at that, so you just talked about another category of AI technology, right? Is predictive technology.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a platform called prediction engine, right? So which is in healthcare on the clinical side, predicting, hey, based on A, B, and C, Rich is going to probably have a heart attack tomorrow. We should do something, right? So you want to be able to predict things like that. I think that when you look at what particular field has the greatest application of artificial intelligence, frankly, it's every field. I think you have to take your specialty, if it's investigation, and you have to say, what are the challenges I need to solve? And for the chiefs or the leaders, some of us that have been around the block more than one time in life, it can be overwhelming. The reality is you don't have to be an artificial intelligence master. You just have to be able to define first the business challenges that you need to resolve. In other words, do I need to do more investigations with the same number of people? Do I need to get my turnaround time from a potential lead to opening a case? Do I need to compress the turnaround time, right? Do I need to reduce the number of false positives that my actual investigators are investigating, right? So you look at just practically first, what do I need to make better in my business? Then you match the artificial intelligence capability to that. You kind of go back. Nobody needs AI. What I need is to solve my business problem so my business works better. And then let's apply the right artificial intelligence to that. No different from our car. I was on a call earlier today with people in the automotive insurance business, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and the use of images that come out of the car now as an investigation tool. Mystery that very few people who are at fault in an auto accident, their car mysteriously has deleted the video footage.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. Yes. Now, if you're not at fault, you mysteriously have the video footage.
Yes.
Right. So those are some of the practical applications that come into play.
You're telling them all of our secrets, Clay.
Yeah.
How we find them.
Clay, I love what you just detailed there, because you did simplify it. So thank you. And it's a complex solution, but if you break it down into what are you trying to do? Like, again, have a scope, have a purpose, have an objective. People, process, then systems, right? I think that holds true and will hold true for years to come. It then breaks, and I'm just thinking back to, again, the numerous conversations I've had with different AI organizations. And one, I won't divulge names, of course, but I remember kind of looking on a screen and I'm like, okay, what are we talking about? And I appreciate all the interactions we've had. I don't need to say it, but I'm going to say it's like, of course, you're a professional. You're always prepared, but you always brought it back, and you never made it feel like today you have an opportunity in front of Rich, but you never made it feel like I was asking the same question over and over again. Now, I may have, and it was more mad, and it wasn't, maybe it was purposeful, but also in a matter of just wanting to understand, the solution, wanting to understand the approach, because I want to kind of internalize that and walk through, and then I can better, then if I can buy into it, then I can see how it can be used. So it's always a matter of kind of piecing it together. But in that regard, when it comes to AI or any solution, any product for that matter, it's like, why do I need it? And so in that, again, I appreciate you said you don't need AI, you need a way to solve problems. And I don't want to attribute that quote to you, but you want a method to be able to solve a problem, to approach a business process. So in that, then, and this probably then falls into making AI not as scary. It's intended to aid. That's what I believe. It's intended to aid. Will it eliminate? It kind of depends on what we're looking at. There's redundancy in just a manual process anyway. If you're really looking at how do you approach it in a more methodical way, you're going to eliminate, going back to the old days of sticky notes and look at the happy path and all those things that we still do today. You're going to do it. This test, I believe, can help you as far as time, right? It compresses the time of getting there. It will present the information in ideally a more user-friendly or effective way. But then you still have to make the decision. You still have to kind of execute the steps, but it's presented to you in a manner that saved you a tremendous amount of time. In doing so, then you gain all the benefits. Tied it into, from a law enforcement standpoint, how it can relate from a healthcare perspective. You and I, no secret, we've been working with your organization for some time now. We're still working through particulars, but it is an area that you really can't ignore. You really need to be able to recognize and say, how do I become part of it? If you're not using a solution, will you be left behind? Well, I think in time, you need to go into it with your eyes wide open to recognize I need to keep pace just with what business is doing. And what is going to dictate the need to make those quicker decisions. So in all that, be it healthcare, law enforcement, any industry, this can be applied across, and it is already. Where do you see like the next big kind of turning point as it relates to AI, and what are you guys focused on in the near future, and then out 5-10 years? Is it just, can we even imagine that far in the future yet?
Yeah, and Scott, I think there's a lot of wisdom in the way you just phrased that question, because you presented the future as 5 to 10 years, right? And you think about when all of us were kids in elementary school, you'd see the futurist video, and it would be 50 years or 100 years, and et cetera. Well, in the artificial intelligence world, the future's about 6 months from now.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, or 12 months from now. The future is being compressed. However, you've got this nexus of two different things. You've got the future of what artificial intelligence can do, but then much like, if you think back to the World Wide Web phenomenon of 25 years ago, you've also got not what can it do, but what is the practical penetration on a day-to-day basis. Think about how long it took from really I'll call it AOL.com, right? Mm-hmm. AOL, this kind of community or big ecosystem website, to ultimately people transacting most of their day-to-day purchases by web. Actually, I say that. Actually, most day-to-day purchases are still not made online. They're made in a brick and mortar retail environment. So we think Amazon owns the world. They own, retail online of what, maybe 20% of all purchases.
Okay.
Right. And so is I think with artificial intelligence, especially in the healthcare space, the investigation of healthcare fraud, waste, and abuse, there are two phenomenon happening together. One is penetration. Rudimentary day-to-day application of artificial intelligence at its most basic level, to detect and to package and to aggregate for action. And the key is for action, not just like, oh, that's cool. That's cool, doesn't pay the bills. Right? Action. The other part is just this phenomenal expansion of what can be done. And then you're creating these hybrid now integrations between types of artificial intelligence along with data. Data is still key. If you don't have good data, then you don't have anything.
Sure.
Right. So you're seeing that the integration of those. So twofold: penetration, normalization, while this amazing run of what can be is happening at the same time.
No, absolutely.
Well, we can't have a conversation about AI without talking a little bit about ethical considerations. It must come up in what you do every single day. I'm not good at it. I'm good at ethics, but I'm not good at AI and ethics. But tell me what you would say, Clay, to people out there who go, I don't know. They know everything about me. What's next?
Yeah. It's interesting. If you look at some of the credit rating companies, services, et cetera, our data is already out there, right? There are 3 or 4 big aggregators of data. And so we are all very well known publicly, whether we know it or not, we are. I think one of the big ethical considerations, Rich, for folks in your world, and I'm sure it applies to just street crime as well, but I'm going to take it back to healthcare, fraud, waste, and abuse, is that, and this is one of the challenges of AI as well. You've got to train the artificial intelligence to be ethical, okay? For example, in a certain state, in a certain region, our technology detected a lot of fraudulent and abusive activity among people of a certain Eastern European ethnic group. Okay. And it was unmistakable. You could not look at the data and say, those surnames all seem to, there's a lot of similarity in those surnames, right? And so your AI could, your generative AI in particular could develop a conclusion that all people of that particular ethnic group are therefore suspicious, right? That would be an incorrect conclusion that, just go investigate everybody whose last name begins with a certain, with a Z, right? And that would be a wrong conclusion. So you need to make sure that although there may be correlation, that being of a certain ethnic group in Eastern Europe is not causation, right? That's not what causes you to go commit fraudulent or abusive billing activities. There may be a correlation, but we need to be focused on the causation and on the actual reality of did it happen or not, right? And so I think we got to train the AI to be not jumping to correlative conclusions that are not correct.
So does artificial intelligence work on the parameters by which you give it to search or look, like an analytical tool? If I was looking for, again, going back to be a cop, if I was looking for auto thefts over the last 6 months, a specific type of car or neighborhood or, method of operation or an MO, is that how AI functions?
Rich, good question. I think you have to go back to, at its root, yes, but you go back to what type of AI, right? So for example, my machine learning, my neural networks I'm going to create a framework in which I want them to go learn, go find these targets, right? As I start getting into more of the agentic AI technologies, that's learning and acting independently. Now, still, there are guardrails, right? And not literally, but you can always unplug the plug. But so you have to ask that question really in terms of what type of artificial intelligence, but we always need to be training it, refining, understanding within the parameters we want it to operate.
Interesting.
Yeah. But for example, in our core integrate AI technology platform, it is going to operate in a supervised and an unsupervised manner because if you look at our patent, the detection of operational threats, in its most simplistic explanation, I want it to go find things that aren't right. All right. My dad grew up in rural Mississippi, right? And I always say at the core, our technology finds things that ain't right. Okay. And it's acting independently in that action.
No, makes sense. As we've seen so far in each episode, we could probably go on for hours. There's so much to talk about. That does set up. Ideally, this is good news, Clay, that there could be a future episode. So we definitely would love to have you back on to talk about more. And certainly as we progress, we invite everyone else to ask questions of us. This is on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you can stream. If there's a certain topic you want us to go into, we will. Obviously, we stretched out a little bit beyond, but again, Clay, it was easy for me to reach out to you, and I appreciate your willingness to talk through that. Again, AI in itself, I think we did kind of boil it down and simplify it. Find something that's not right. That's kind of what it comes down to. In its pure sense, it's helping to find something that's just not acting the way it should. From there, you build many things around it, many processes. But if it leads you down that path of good, if that can still exist, and which I believe it can in this world, then everyone's gonna do their part. So I appreciate you kind of putting that lens, that light on it. Sheriff Stanek, as always, appreciate your insight. And until next time, again, Clay, thank you. Rich, as always, this is As the Badge Turns.
Yep.
Again, check us out, subscribe, like, follow, comment, all that good stuff. We'll keep coming back if you guys are listening. So till next episode, thanks and take care.
Clay, you're a good man.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye, Scott. Bye, Clay.
Hi, I'm Scott with Prime Health Services and Prime Corrections. And when I'm not hosting with Sheriff Stanek, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about our offsite inmate medical cost containment solution. So if you're running a jail and you have to take an inmate offsite for medical treatment of any type, have you ever paid full bill charges for that expense? Hopefully not. But if you have, let Prime help you out. So what we do every day, we receive many bills. I'll give you one example of a bill we just processed this week. This was for a county in Florida. This was for an air ambulance treatment. The total bill, $53,256. Through our scrubbing process and negotiations, we were able to reduce that bill down to $8,447.26. That's a savings of 84%. So if you are looking to save on your offsite inmate medical expense, contact Prime. You can reach us via a link below. You can also send an email directly to corrections@primehealthservices.com. That's corrections@primehealthservices.com. Let Prime show you and let Prime help you save money. Thanks and have a great day.